The best part is that after they ask if I'm a boy or girl, and I respond with girl, they often then argue with me that due to my hair, voice, and boy clothes, that I am in fact a boy. Weekly, I get to hear from kids the question, are you a boy or girl? Or I get to listen to their wonderfully unique stories about how when they first met me, they thought I was a boy. Despite these observations, I was born as a female and that's how I identify, making me cisgender. Although in appearance, I greatly prefer more androgynous looks. At least I think they're androgynous. Before moving to Sturgeon Bay, my gender was never such a focal point of my day-to-day life. I'll never forget the moment when my own perceptions were challenged, and I vowed to minimize as much as I could the use of ma'am and sir. I was working at a Chipotle in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, as the person who asks if you would like a burrito or a bowl. Relying only on my peripheral vision, I struck up a friendly conversation with, "Hi sir, how are you today?" Now, without making any further assumptions about how this person identified, I saw a piece of my short-haired gay self in this person that made me cringe due to my own conclusions. This would not be the last time that perceptions about gender would haunt me, but instead the focus shifted to me. Although none of these stories were funny at the time, I invite you all to share in some of the comedy I and those around me have since pulled from these situations. One of the most baffling stories took place while shopping at Target. Upon checking out, my only two purchases were an Easter lily and a pack of gum. In my opinion, not enough items to warrant using a bag. After scanning my items, the cashier asked, "Would you like a bag for this, big fella?" To this day, I can't decide if I was more shocked to be referred to as big or fella. Do people actually say these things? Even if I was a small-framed man, how demeaning is it to make comments about my body type, especially in a community and culture that doesn't tend to value men who are short or scrawny? Now, this next situation happened more than I would ever like to publicly admit, but for this special event, I'm making an exception. An important piece of this dynamic is that I look 19. I know I'm actively looking for ways to look older without being completely inauthentic, but it just isn't that easy. 10 years from now, I will be so lucky. But for now, this. Frequently, when my ex-girlfriend and I were out shopping, I was referred to as her son. Yikes. Talk about a tough situation when you're trying to be in a lesbian relationship with a woman who just happens to be a few years older than you. After being referred to as her son, how the hell do you even work with that? Imagine all the levels their minds would have been blown if I would have responded with, "No, actually, I'm her girlfriend." As much enjoyment as I think I could have pulled from their reactions, I could never quite bring myself to disrupt their assumptions. By far the most embarrassing story took place in a locker room. Of course, right? Upon walking in, I came face to face with an older woman. The look of fear on her face upon seeing me was tremendous. This look was followed by, "This is the women's locker room," to which I confidently responded, "Sorry, I am a woman." I felt bad that this woman feared that a man had just casually strolled into the women's locker room. I felt bad that due to my looks, this woman felt afraid. There's this thing called the feminine apologetic. The feminine apologetic refers to any behaviors that female athletes engage in to negate or negotiate the negative stereotypes associated with their participation in sport. To do this, they embody the traditional heterosexual notion of femininity. Moving this beyond just the world of sports, you can see how women who do things that are traditionally considered masculine feel the need to prove that they are indeed still feminine. Women will do this in a variety of ways, usually in their physical appearance. A great example of this is Serena Williams, who consistently receives comments about her overly muscular body, and her signature looks include cat eyes, soft pretty hair, hoop earrings, short shorts, necklaces, and skirts. Without knowing her or asking her, this fits into a textbook example of feminine apologetic. At this point, in certain situations, when I just don't want to deal with the boy or girl question, I participate in this apology. Pink shoes, pink tank top, hairstyle specifically, clothes that look more feminine, going by Britney. These are all defense mechanisms I have built up for days when I just don't want to talk about my gender. Now these tricks don't even always work, but how disappointing that I consider any of this. Can we all take a moment to think of how our own assumptions affect the daily lives of others? Beyond my own experience, it's amazing to realize how many people walk through the world with assumptions placed upon them. Even if they aren't the same set of expectations that I have placed upon me, I do think they boil down to similar feelings. I will leave you all with a poem I wrote about one experience in particular. At times, I feel sorry. Instead of apologizing directly, I do so femininely. Upon entering this room, my first move is to expose my most feminine parts, because there is no space in this particular room, in this particular place, to be queer.
Wow.